Adam created mortal, death existed before the fall. The natural system was always mortal. Most Christians hold that when Adam sinned, all creation fell with him, that the natural order, even to its physical elements, became corrupted. Yet Moses tells us plainly that when the terrestrial system was completed on the sixth day, the deity saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Genesis 1:31. In what sense was it very good? In an animal and physical sense, for it was a natural and animal system, not a spiritual one. Such a system is necessarily one of waste, decay, and renewal. The deity organized it with full foreknowledge of what would come to pass. The placement of the earth in relation to the sun, moon, and stars established the diversity of seasons, summer and winter, growth and decay. Thus, death and corruption were institutions existing before the fall, woven into the design of nature itself. Cellular decay and the natural law of mortality. When Adam and Eve beheld the fading of the leaves and the withering of plants, they observed phenomena that already testified to the existence of a principle of corruption in the natural order, what we now call cellular decay and cellular aging. Death and reproduction were not consequences of sin, but the fundamental laws of the physical creation. The living forms made from dust were designed to perish and renew. This is the natural law of the 6 days, and it existed before the transgression in Eden. Adam's constitution, before and after the fall. Adam and Eve, therefore, as natural creatures, would have died and returned to dust, even if they had never transgressed, unless the deity had intervened to bestow a higher nature. The Genesis account does not suggest any change in Adam's physical composition when he sinned. There is no evidence of a transformation of substance, no hint that mortality was newly introduced. There was a change in Adam's relationship to his maker, not in his organization. The living soul and the law of probation. He was formed from the dust of the ground, and the breath of life made him a living soul, Genesis 2:7, a natural body animated by breath. His moral constitution gave him a relationship with the deity. A commandment was given, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, dying thou shalt die. Genesis 2:17. When he disobeyed, the sentence followed, dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Genesis 3:19. Before disobedience, Adam was a living soul under probation for immortality. After disobedience, he was a living soul under sentence of death. In both cases, he remained a living soul, a natural body. The phrase sin in the flesh, used by Paul, Romans 8:3, describes this mortal condition. It is expressive of a literal element within the body, what modern language calls cellular aging and cellular decay, pervading the physical organism. Sin literally means missing the mark. Humanity has missed the mark of divine perfection, both morally and physically. Symbolically, sin is lawlessness. Literally, it is the imperfection inherent in the organism of flesh, the nature of sin in the flesh. The impulses that lead to sin dwell in the flesh and therefore are described by the name of the acts they produce. Yet those impulses existed in Adam before disobedience. Otherwise, he could not have been tempted. They are not evil in themselves. Every propensity serves a good purpose in its proper sphere. Sin arises when a legitimate impulse is used unlawfully, when the natural desire is misdirected. Evil and sin are thus relative terms. There is no essential evil in nature. The difficulty lies in maintaining the impulses within their legitimate channel. The two kinds of death in Romans 5. Some may ask, if Adam would have died naturally, how can Paul say that death entered the world through sin? Romans 5:12. The answer lies in understanding what kind of death Paul describes. The death principle was already present as a property of nature, but moral death, alienation from the deity, entered through transgression. Paul writes, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. The cause of universal death is not the transmission of a corrupted nature, but the universality of sin. Physical death, therefore, is not the punishment of sin, but its occasion. Mortality belongs to all natural life. Adam's moral act brought spiritual separation, not biological mutation. The decree, dying thou shalt die, refers to the certainty of returning to dust, a natural outcome of being made from dust. Had Adam obeyed, he would have lived in harmony with the deity and been granted access to the tree of life, which could have interrupted the process of cellular decay and conferred incorruption. But once he transgressed, that access was barred, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Genesis 3:22. The two trees and the law of relationship. Thus, the distinction between life and death in Eden depended not upon any difference in animal constitution, but upon relation to those two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life symbolized transformation into incorruption. The other represented knowledge gained by transgression and its accompanying moral death. When Adam and Eve ate, they came under a law that condemned them, not by introducing new physical properties, but by confirming their natural mortality and cutting them off from divine fellowship. Condemnation and constitution in Romans 5. Romans 5 sheds light on this relational aspect. Paul writes, "As one trespass led to condemnation for all men, so one act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all men." Romans 5 verse 18. The contrast is judicial, not biological. Humanity was constituted sinners through Adam's disobedience, just as it is constituted righteous through Christ's obedience. The verb made, Greek kathisteme, means appointed or constituted, referring to a change in standing, not in substance. The fall introduced condemnation, not corruption. The meaning of wages in Romans 6:23. If physical death were the punishment of sin, the death of Jesus would be inexplicable, for he was sinless. Hebrews 5 verse 7 says of him, "In the days of his flesh, he offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his reverence." The sinless one still experienced mortality, proving that physical death is not the direct wage of sin, but the natural condition of all who share Adam's nature. For the wages of sin is death, Romans 6:23, thus encompasses both physical death, expressed in cellular decay and return to dust, and spiritual death, expressed in alienation from the deity. The Greek word translated wages is opsonia, which literally referred to a soldier's daily rations or pay. It signifies not a single penalty delivered at once, but an ongoing payment, the continuous compensation one receives for service rendered. Applied to human nature, this term portrays sin as an employer and decay as its recurring wage. The process of cellular decay, the slow deterioration inherent in flesh, is therefore the continual pay sin dispenses. Each moment of corruption and aging is a portion of that wage, which ultimately concludes in death, the full payment of dissolution. The fall was moral, not physical. The Genesis narrative, therefore, presents no change in Adam's nature. He was mortal before he sinned, and mortal afterward. His expulsion from Eden did not alter his body, but severed his access to the source of incorruption. The curse pronounced upon the ground and upon labor, Genesis 3:17-19, changed Adam's environment and condition, not his essence. His nature remained that of a living soul, subject to the same natural laws of cellular aging and cellular decay established from the beginning. The fall was a moral and relational event. It changed Adam's position before the deity, not his physical being. Humanity's need since that time has not been for a restoration of nature, but for reconciliation. As Paul declares, "For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life." Romans 5:10. The purpose of redemption is not to reverse mortality, but to restore communion. Conclusion: redemption restores relationship. In summary, there was no change in Adam's nature at the fall. The natural world remained as it had been, very good, yet mortal. Sin and death, as moral and physical realities, existed before the transgression. The fall marked the entrance of guilt, not of mortality. Man, created a living soul from the dust, remained so. His disobedience broke his fellowship with the deity, subjecting him to exile and sorrow, but not to a newly corrupted body. Redemption, therefore, aims not at changing human biology, but at reconciling the human relationship with the Creator. The fall was moral, not physical, and its remedy is the restoration of that lost relationship through the life of the one who overcame death itself.